He has conducted many seminars in Australia, India, Taiwan, Thailand, Philippines, and even in Singapore. We have 3.5 years part-time teachers training for grade school back then. Okay, so he also was involved in setting up initiative across Australia and Asia. So some of you might know him quite well. Without further ado, let's welcome Horst.
Okay, thank you. So this baby is born July 15. And well, when you look at this baby, and everyone has own children and might remember, this is how one is born. Helpless, ignorant of earthly conditions, the tools by which we can be effective on earth have not been developed. So with our physical body, we get to know the world. We grasp, touch, feel, walk, fall, and balance in the three-dimensional world. And when our body is sufficiently settled in, then the growth forces are released, which are then shaping our thinking. We must use now the same mobility that we conquered during our first years to conquer in the thinking or spiritual realm. Thinking thereby becomes motoric movement on a higher level. So, Rudolf Steiner introduced the 12 senses in 1916, but then it was just that he has known 10 senses, and he really did hard research on this until he came to the 12 senses. And it took very long, I would say until 1994, 96, that the 12th sense was discovered by science. So these 12 senses are not very well known in the world. And they are the open doors to the world. But today, these senses are in danger. So the world is too noisy, it's too fast, too sweet, too strong colors. We have the media, less space to play, the dangerous traffic, less movement. So out of this, there arise the learning problems, also ADHD. So we have really to be conscious on our senses. So save our senses, SOS. Meanwhile, one knows that nimble fingers make really nimble minds. That means our brain development is based on our movements, for example. And therefore, our leisure time should provide activities which involve the senses. So we see the human being as a fourfold human being with a physical body where the life forces are in, then the soul, thinking, feeling, and willing, and the I, or self, or ego. That is a fourfold human being. And we also are threefold. We have the nerve system, the blood circulation, the breathing, and the limbs and metabolism. Now the 12 senses of Rudolf Steiner are these. You see, that is the sense of touch, then sense of life, movement, balance, smell, taste, sight, warmth, hearing, language or words, thoughts, and ego, sense of ego. So let's begin with a sense of touch. This sense of touch is not reaching over the body. So my skin is the border. And when I'm touching something, then it works inwardly. And it is interesting, it gives a feeling of myself. I feel myself when I can touch something. If I'm not allowed to touch, then it is difficult to become self-conscious. Maybe one had the experience that somehow you have slept or was in a kind of dreamy state, and then you pinch your skin to know if you are in this world. So this sense of touch gives a feeling that I and the world, we belong together. We have this solid ground under the feet. And that gives me the feeling I can rely on this. When you are at night in the forest or you go into a swamp, so very unusual situations, then you see that you are not really sure what happens. And it needs this feeling of substance and also the gravity that I feel, oh, I don't have to fear. When this is not there, then I fear. So the sense of touch gives me this feeling that I do not have to fear. That means self-confidence and respect. And I am. This is a sense of touch. And therefore, the children, the baby, needs cuddles. Everything what you do with a baby, and you dress, you carry everything where the baby feels something. This is a sense of touch, and that gives the baby the feeling, oh, I am in God's hand, maybe like this. I don't have to fear. It's very important for the children to have this feeling. If not, later in life, you may run into trouble and need help by a psychologist. Then we come to the sense of life. That means, how do I feel myself? Am I good, or do I feel weak, or pain, or hungry or thirsty, weaknesses. The nerves in our body, the autonomous nervous system, the solar plexus, the ganglions along the spine, the points of pain within the skin. So all this makes this sense of well-being. And we experience a totality of inner processes, of build up and breaking down. And this has to be in a certain harmony. It gives a judgment to everything what happens within the body. And that comes also from our connection to the world around. So the baby shows it in the moment with crying or with happiness. So this sense is totally a logical sense. And the processes in our body are pure logic. And when everything goes well, then we feel comfortable. Feeling comfortable is that we also have joy. And joy leads to courage and equanimity. So that means we lead a very basic character, feeling comfortable, courageous, joyous, and the basis of equanimity. So later on, it is, for example, the pain that we felt, then we can feel with others. So it's compassion that is based also on this sense. And finally, to conscience. So that's a sense of life. Then we have the sense of the own movement. And this sense is always together with the sense of balance. So the whole nerve system goes through our body, and the sense of balance is based in the ear. And together, the sense of balance and the sense of movement are the basis for mathematics and architecture. That's important for the teacher to know that mathematics has to do with movement and balance. I mean, when we have the scale, of course, we deal with balance. And interesting enough, when the children are learning mathematics, then the fingertips have more blood inside. And that is also that children are more noisy and move when there is the mathematics. So with the sense of movement, I control my movements. And it gives me the feeling of my own will, that I can work and grip. And when you see how the baby gets into the life, then you see how the will enters the limbs. At the beginning, the movements are not under control. And there you can observe pure will, the pure will without guidance through the eye. Then you have these movements. And then you see slowly the eye moves into the will and gets the will under control. And the more that happens, the child gets the feeling to be free, to do what I want. That means this sense is a basis for the feeling of freedom and inner independence. And the more I feel this, the more joy is in my soul. And thinking, feeling, and willing are more and more under my command. So when we help the children too much during this time of stepping into the world and moving around, then it has less chance to move out of the own will. It is the other one. So when you cannot wait until the baby is standing by itself, and you take the baby by the hands and it is not able to stand by herself, so then it cannot have the feeling of the own will. So we have to wait until the baby comes into the upright position and crawling and then standing and finally walking. The less we help, the more the child feels the inner strength. And when you see the view of the child when it does the own steps, you know, the view is so full of energy and pride and joy. So if we help the children too much, then they do not have this feeling. They cannot control their movements. And it can be the basis for ADHD later, but also for depression when we help too much, because then there is a problem and the feeling comes up, oh, I can't do it. I can't. But if you had this feeling in the young age that you can get everything when you just strive, it is a good basis for later not to fall into depressions. Then there is sense of balance that is located in the ear. And this sense is always directed to the center of the earth. And we see this sense developing in the first 3 years of childhood. And we see the child's view, the smile, how the head comes up, the arms and the trunk. The child is sitting, creeping, standing, does the first step, and then there is a joy. And you see the way how they balance. With the age of 3, then this sense is quite developed already. And it is the time where the child feels, I have a standpoint. That means when the parents say, come on, we go, and the child says no. And when the parents say, we don't go, then the child says yes. So this sense of balance, when it's there, this kind of feeling comes up. And it is inwardly an inner calmness and safety. Let's, in the end, we come to the peace of mind, unselfishness, because you have inner balance that is later in life. And therefore, in Waldorf education, we are fostering these senses that I have been talking about. So somebody should unmute. Yeah. And in the first 7 years, these 4 senses, touch, life, movement, and balance, are the most important senses where we can do everything to develop these senses. And the child is imitating everything. Everything goes right into the character of the child. And therefore, the child is trusting. When you are imitating, you are trusting. And that is a basic feeling of the childhood. The world is good. So we have to care for this as parents and teachers, that the child gets this trust. In the 4 senses, we call them also the lower senses, are very important for this. So we have the sense of touch that causes trust. The sense of life gives self-confidence. The sense of movement, the feeling of independence. And the sense of balance, experience of harmony. So that is the fruit of the first 7 years. And then we enter grade school. And now the child looks into the world, into the outer world, to perceive much more sensitively and consciously what is in the world. And there, in Waldorf education, we show that the world is beautiful. The world is beautiful. And when the children get this feeling of beauty soaked into the soul, that makes them later creative when the world is not so beautiful. So the sense of smell, there we taste the air. And this sense is very much connected to sympathy and antipathy. Yeah, everyone knows this, that when there is an ugly smell, we are not sympathetic with this. We try to get away. Or then you have the perfume industry that tries to cause sympathy. So the teacher should not use perfume, because it is an individual feeling that you have when you have a perfume. There are children who do not like a certain smell. And then they feel antipathy towards the teacher. And then they cannot learn. So this sense becomes blunt very quickly. Yeah, you enter a room where you feel, oh, it's stinking. Being there for a while, you don't smell it anymore. But also, this sense of smell is influencing the state of health. Yeah, we know that we can vomit when there is a certain smell. But also, a good smell gives us a feeling of health. We cannot avoid to smell. Smell is also connected with memories. So the nature walks that we do in Waldorf education, there the children will always smell flowers and fruits and so on. This sense is so that it also is affecting our morality. We know that the stench of hell is there, or the perfume of paradise. It is also that we smell, is that good or is it not good? And we bring it together with the moral judgment when we in Germany say, oh, there is a, you enter a community and you say, oh, it stinks here. Although it is not really stinking, but you feel the mood is like this. The negative emotions. This sense has also that we are overcoming sympathy and antipathy. So when you have somebody helpless lying there in the street and dirty and vomiting, so you have to overcome your antipathy. That means compassion is developing. So the smell of sin, a sense of smell, also has to do with this that we have in Waldorf education, nature walks. The children do farming in class 3. They have botany in class 5. They have geology. And all this has to do with all these senses. Or you have flowers on the desks, or I had little vases with little flowers there. And then you see the children coming in the morning and they smell these flowers. But also you can have games that the children, the eyes are blindfolded, and then the children should find out what smell is given to them. Then we have the sense of taste. The worlds of natural substances. We taste only in liquid form. And when you have milk powder, at the moment you have no taste. Only when the saliva comes to it, then you feel what it is like. The word comes into my body, and so I am led into my body by this sense. It is an inward experience. And together with the sense of smell, we have the door of the sense of life to the outer world. There we taste sour, bitter, sweet, salty, pungent. And when you have bitter, this is waking you up. If you had sweet, it makes you dreamy. So this sense, these qualities are also affecting our feelings. And sometimes the willed actions are together with this taste. And we relate it also to our life. We have bitter experiences, and there's a sweet child, and somebody is tasteful dressed. You are finding out with the sense if something is healthy or unhealthy. That means it is a judgment about quality. Also, our thinking can be healthy. So you see that this sense, the quality of the sense, also goes into this soul quality of thinking. And so this taste leads to tactfulness, politeness. For example, the table manners. We have to learn. How do you behave? In Waldorf education, the children learn cooking, and also the taste for colors, the harmony of the colors. It's also where the taste is transformed on another level. And when we have breakfast at school, we have a tablecloth. So we put everything very nicely there, because the eye is also eating with us. So this sense of taste. Then the sense of sight. That gives us information about the outer world. The consciousness is alert. The light is uniting, integrating. So once I sat at the seaside, I went there to the seaside at night. There were the stars and I couldn't see anything. And then slowly the light came up, and then I saw the fisher boats, and I saw further, and finally I had the whole picture, This sense is only touching the surface of objects. But the sense is related to the sense of life, movement, balance, smell, to taste. So this sense of sight works in many other senses. In general, all the senses are combined working. Then our eyes have jerky movements, very fast little movements, and that makes that we can see sharp. When we stare, then the object disappears. And we can feel that when I focus, then my will enters the eye. And I can say, my will goes right out of the eye. And the more I can focus, the better I am present. When we watch TV, then our will is put at rest. And we feel it also after a movie or so, that our activity sometimes will not come back. When I see everything what is around me, then I feel content. And With this, I also form the connection to other people. The eyes are very important, that we see, look into my eyes. So in the morning, the teacher greeting the children by hand, then the teacher will also see that the eyes are meeting. And then you can already see something, how the child is this morning. But also, the honesty is there. The true, the trust, the true being is met. Look into my eyes. Are you honest? So this is a very important moment also with the eyes. And many parents of today are less aware of this. You have the stroller, the pram, and then you can see on the right that the person has positioned the baby with the face looking into the world. The other one, the parent looks into the eyes of the baby. And this is bonding. That's so important, that the children in the beginning of life learn this bonding. Otherwise, they are in danger to become autistic. There are, of course, other reasons for autism, but this is something that the children are not learning to bond. Where is my parent when there is something coming towards me and I don't know it? I am afraid. Whilst when there is something happening around the baby in the left, then the face of the mother or father says, there is no danger, no problem. Yeah, so that is a very important thing nowadays. So then we come to the sense of temperature or warmth. The own temperature of my body is the indicator for this sense. It's very individual. We have the thermometer, but that is not giving the right feeling for me how warm it is. And this warmth is in my blood. And that's interesting that our eye is incarnating into the warmth of the blood. We know that when a person is dead, the body gets cold. We experience the inner essence and also the state of the objects. We feel if somebody has fever or not, just by the hands. We penetrate deeper into the outer world and its inner substance by the sense of warmth. And we feel it when something is made from plastic. This warmth, to compare with wood, gives a very different feeling. This sense of warmth makes us interested in the world. And there is a connection to the sense of life. The average temperature makes us feeling well. The sense also transforms into the colors. We have warm colors, cold colors, and so on. But also the feelings that we have when somebody utters thoughts. There are thoughts which have less warmth. I mean, when one is always criticizing, then you feel no relationship. So there is no warmth coming up. But there is a warmth that comes from the heart. And this warmth has also to do with excitement. It gives warmth. I can give warmth to others. And this is something that is unique to the human being. The human being produces warmth, and this is a warmth that is there in the world only because of the human being. Our enthusiasm connects to the world. It gives warmth to the community. When we love, then we go to everything with a certain excitement. There is also a warmth when we hate, but that is a quality of egoism. Love is the opposite, is opening, is connecting. And where there is love, there will always be patience and forgiveness. And in the school, we can also create a kind of warmth, the warmth of welcome. Also that we do not have grades, numbers. The children are allowed to make mistakes because mistakes are very important. They are the moment of learning. So, and then the children are encouraged to find the way to make it better. So in this sense, there is not this elbow competition. You are competing with yourself. So with this sense, the four senses we had here, there we show the beauty of the world. The world is beautiful. This is the headline of the time that we have at school up to class 8. The world is beautiful. So then we come to the 4 higher senses. We had the lower senses, we had the middle senses, and now to the higher senses. There, the inner world is to be formed. Hearing, language, thoughts, the ego. And the sense of hearing is only active when we are listening to music and to noise. When we listen to language, then other parts of the brain are active. Also, the understanding is another activity of the brain. We are hearing analytically. Yeah, that when you are a word watcher, then you listen often to many songs of the birds. And then you see, oh, this bird over there, that's I mean. And then you can hear, really, you can locate your sense of hearing into distances. But you also can hear synthetically in music, the intervals, the harmony. By listening, we are penetrating deeply into the inner core of the matter, and also living beings. We can hear if the porcelain is destroyed, has a crack, or when you listen to an animal as it is in need, or maybe just feels happy. And when we are listening, we have to have balance, inner balance. Because when we are running and jumping around, then we cannot listen properly. That means we are doing less than nothing. It is an immobility, a kind of active rest. We are very active, but we rest. And that we are opening to others. And that makes us selfless and understanding. So when you have an orchestra, play in orchestra, you have to listen to the others, also singing in the choir. And bringing this into harmony. That means you have to have a distance from yourself. This is a quality. Imagine. And a young child does not have this. This is something that begins around puberty. That you are learning to become selfless, to distance from yourself. That is a social faculty. And singing and music makes people social, fosters social faculties. And therefore, in Waldorf education, we have music right from the beginning in kindergarten. And the parents at home, they should sing and do little music already with the children. Music is also a very important moment to prevent from the use of drugs. That's an extra topic. Maybe we have time to talk about it in the end. So also the music is fostering the intellect, the IQ. Of course, the emotions, emotional quotient. And when you think how you have to practice, then you are fostering your will. So music fosters the IQ, the EQ, and the WQ. So that is the hearing. And now coming to the sense of language and words. So of course, we hear it through our ears. But the reality is that our perception organ, with these muscles we use to create our language. The larynx, the skull, the bones, the lungs, the whole body is vibrating when we are speaking. And now, when we are listening to the words, then the listener vibrates in the same way. So one is dancing with the speaker. High-speed cameras show it when they are directed to the speaker and another camera to the listener, that the listener has the same movements, micro movements, as the speaker. It is not so strong when we listen to a loudspeaker. It is less. And when we want to develop this sense of language and words, then we have to keep our own organs down and quiet. Otherwise, we will not really understand what the other one says. So this sense is based also on the sense of movement. So transformed movements are making this sense. And by listening, we can penetrate deep into the soul of the individuality of the speaker. So the speech and the movement are going together. And we know this from, when we speak, when we see a movie, it always has to do with movements. And also some people who are very impulsive, they use their hands and everything, the parts of the body when they are speaking. This sense fosters inner courage. In Waldorf education, the children learn 2 languages right from the beginning. They have poetry and rhythm, theater, and gestures. So we work very, very much with this sense consciously every day. The sense of thoughts. Yeah, we have a sense of thoughts. We can listen to a speaker for a while, and suddenly you feel, oh, what is he saying? That means we heard the words, but we did not understand the message. We didn't get the message. This sense is related to the sense of life. Everyone knows when one is sick, the thinking will not work so nice. So the doctor will not say, oh, that you are getting healthy again. Now you must read a philosophy or this. No, he will say, don't do anything. Let your head at rest, and then you will recover. So this sense of thoughts is based on this sense of life. Therefore, it's important that in the beginning, the sense of life is fostered by a harmonious house, a harmonious environment. The conditions for this sense are you have to keep your own thoughts out, because the thought of the other should live in you. Also, you have to become neutral. No sympathy or antipathy too much. Be like a canvas, an empty canvas, and like a mirror. So one has to educate oneself to this, not too much sympathy, not too much empathy. And we see this is not possible for children before puberty. That's something that comes when the children are beyond 14 age. Then we have a body language and sign language. Also, this is something. Also, writing and reading, the traffic signs, gestures. I have to get a distance from myself and being interested in cultures, in others. And there is self-education needed. And an idea can exist without speech. A word by Rupert Sheldrake. And one granddaughter of mine saw a documentary about this Japanese Emoto. And Emoto had an experiment that she did. She had 3 jars of rice. And in a room where nobody else was allowed to enter. And in this rice, it was in water. And for 30 days, every morning, she entered this room and thought, didn't speak. Thank you to this jar. And you are an idiot, scolding to this jar. And this jar was ignored. And now see the result after 30 days. This ignored jar was rotting and a terrible stench. This jar, where she was with good thoughts, thank you. You see, nothing. It has a smell like a flower. And this, where she was scolding, that was, just between. You see, we have an influence on living objects. Rice is living just by thinking. That means for us as parents, as teachers, what happens to the person when we ignore the person, when we are positively thinking, or when we are scolding? That what happens with the life forces. So the sense of thoughts is in a world of life forces, in all living creatures. We are influencing this. So then the last sense, the sense of ego, or we also can say the sense of I, or the sense of empathy. It is not my ego. It is that I experience the ego of the person I meet. And there it's interesting that in 1994 or 6, one discovered the mirror neurons. You have these mirror neurons in the forehead, about 2 centimeters behind the skull. And these make possible that you feel at once with the other person. Why do I feel what you feel? But also everything what you experience by meeting the other person, that goes into my personality. And this is empathy in a highest form. And this sense is working with antipathy and sympathy. When we have sympathy, then we are connecting with something. When we have antipathy, we come back to ourselves, we cut somehow the relationship. And this sense, in a very fast way, is so that we feel sympathy. We don't see this. We are not conscious about this. But then coming back to ourselves, reflecting our experience of sympathy. So sympathy is sleeping into the other person. Antipathy means waking up. So this sense shows the character of the other person in totality. And this sense can work properly when I have become selfless and accepting. That means I have to be open to the other person. I have to develop a pleasant interest. And I have to sacrifice myself for a moment. Not I, but the other one in me. And this is beyond gender and race and age and body. And we can see that this only a high school student can work on. To strive for this quality in you. The little child cannot consciously. They perceive it differently, dreamy. They dream into the other. Yeah, it's sometimes a person is entering the room where the baby is in, and the baby begins to cry, although nothing happens. The baby perceived something, And that is beyond everything. It also cannot have a distance to the experience. It is just this in the moment. This is something that we learn lifelong to work with this sense.
Horst,
So the,
Horst,
yeah,
we are left with about 20 minutes or less. So yeah, but there's also the Q&A session. Okay.
I'm just at the end.
Okay, great.
So now we have these senses, and you see that they are meaning more than usually. These senses have values. The touch is no fear. Life is feeling comfortable and joy. Movement is inner independence and freedom. Balance, inner balance, calmness, peace of mind. Smell is good or not good. Taste, healthy, unhealthy. The sight, inner contentment. Warmth gives enthusiasm. Hearing, selfless, open. Language, inner courage. Thoughts are giving interest. And the ego sense, sacrifice, reunification. You see that developing these senses are giving values and moral. When we are talking, how can we bring values to the children? We must look at the 12 senses and developing them. So, of course, one could go on with many other ideas, but I make a stop here.